So divorce mediation is one of the two main alternative approaches to divorce in Connecticut. So we have traditional divorce litigation that can be high or low conflict. You can settle out of court, or you might use the court to make decisions for you. Then there's collaborative divorce, and then there's mediation. Mediation is where most commonly there's a neutral mediator who's probably a divorce lawyer, but who doesn't represent either you or your spouse. And you attend meetings with that mediator and your spouse and attempt to reach decisions together. On the side, we want each of you to have mediation review counsel. That's a divorce lawyer who is your lawyer, who represents you, who gives you legal advice, not like the neutral mediator. That divorce mediation review counsel isn't in the room with you. They're helping you on the side to understand the decisions that you're making. Divorce mediation is designed to try and resolve all of the issues in your case. Property division, alimonies, child support, how parenting is going to work if you have children, all of the issues. And what that means is that mediation is a structured way to negotiate a resolution to your divorce. What's that require? Well, it requires compromise. It is highly unlikely that you and your spouse are going to go in and view 100% of the issues 100% the same way. There is going to be give and take. And in a mediation, it's up to the two of you to decide how to resolve the distance between what the two of you want, what your unique perspectives are. In contrast, in a litigation, the judge is available to you to make that decision for you. That has pros and cons as well. But in the context of a mediation, know that compromise is how we resolve the delta between what both of you think should happen. There will be differences on alimony, maybe on whether there should be any, maybe on how much or how long it lasts. There might be differences on property. Maybe you want more of the retirement and your spouse thinks they need more of the retirement, or you care more about keeping the home, but your spouse also wants the home, right? There are a lot of issues to decide in a mediation, and generally speaking, some of them are easier to resolve than others. Some take more compromise than others. So what are the benefits of compromise? It's not always easy, but in most cases, it's worth it. So let's talk about why. If you figure out how to compromise, you are keeping control over the outcome of the divorce in the hands of you and your spouse. You're not putting them in the hands of a judge who doesn't know you and doesn't know a lot about your situation and doesn't have a lot of time to learn about it. So the people that are most invested in the outcome are making the decisions, and the neutral mediator is there to help you, and your review counsel on the side is there to help you know that you're making fully informed decisions and give you legal advice. So one of the first main benefits of compromise is it keeps control between the parties. The other thing that's a big benefit of compromise is that if you embrace it, there's a lot of emotional relief that comes from knowing you are working together to make these decisions. You're not going to like all of the compromise you make. You're going to wish you didn't have to compromise on some things you compromised on. But the truth is that overall, if you're able to retain as much control over the global settlement as possible, you and your spouse, not a judge, then that means that you can fully own the decisions you made and the basis for those decisions, and rest easy that you have a divorce that you participated in and designed for your future. Another benefit of reaching a compromise via a mediation is that you have an agreement that is more likely to be followed. It's more likely to be workable. That's a great benefit of compromise. And then on top of that, it tends to preserve your relationship. So when you're able to sit at a table with your spouse and a neutral mediator and figure things out, that reduces the zero-sum game of litigation. You are working together to come up with something. Again, it won't be 100% of what you want. It won't be 100% of what your spouse wants, but you're both invested in the process, working towards it together. And what that means is that later on down the line, your relationship will be more preserved than it may have been if you had been in more of a right, wrong, black, white situation in the context of a high conflict divorce. There are 3 kind of basic steps to help you find common ground when you're trying to reach compromises in a mediation. And the first is to identify your priorities. So before you even walk into the mediation room, I'd recommend you have a meeting with your review counsel and talk to them about your priorities. These could be your priorities in terms of the settlement itself, how you want property division to work, alimony, child support, parenting, all of the issues that get resolved in a divorce. And then also your goals for the process itself. How committed are you to the mediation and resolving this in mediation? How quickly do you want things to move? How are you willing to prioritize your desire to conclude the mediation quickly and effectively with your priorities around the substantive things in a divorce, like property division? Have a clear view of your priorities when you walk into the mediation room. Then the next thing that you want to do after you've defined your own priorities with the assistance and advice of your review counsel is go into the mediation and share your priorities and have your spouse share their priorities. So for example, when you know what matters most to your spouse and when your spouse knows what matters most to you, it can be a great fertile opportunity to honor what you both need. Your priorities aren't necessarily going to be in conflict. Some of them might work out perfectly. Some of them might not. So for example, say one spouse really wants to keep the house and they share why. And the other spouse is fine with that, doesn't want to keep the house. Well, that spouse that doesn't want to keep that house may be very happy to honor the other spouse's desire to keep it. That can work nicely. By sharing our priorities, we can actually find common ground and then also find the areas where we're going to have to work through it. We're not sure how to handle this issue. The priorities don't line up as cleanly. So sharing things so that we identify what's going to be easy, what's going to require more compromise is a great first step to figuring out and finding common ground in your divorce. So after you've identified your priorities, and then after you've shared your priorities, you have to listen. And this can be one of the hardest things in mediation because our instinct is to talk. So you have to actively listen. You have to make sure you're really listening to your spouse. And sometimes active listening requires asking questions. Asking questions is part of listening actively. So if my spouse and I are in mediation and we're trying to resolve our divorce, I might be listening to my spouse share their opinions. And my little brain is going and I'm thinking about how I think about that. And I'm wondering, what I invite you to do is try really hard to just listen to what they're saying and get curious. What do you want to know more about? So if they make a statement like, my pension is really important to me, after they finish, without interrupting, you might ask, can you tell me a little bit more about why your pension is so meaningful to you? It's not a judgmental question. It's a curious question. And what you might learn is they're worried about their financial future. And what you might think is, well, I wonder if there's some other way to accomplish that might support what their actual priority is, their financial future, that would be a more expansive solution than just thinking about the pension itself. So make sure you're an active listener. Don't fill in the gaps with your own response. Get curious about what they're saying. then the next thing that you're going to want to do after you've actively listened is you're going to want to brainstorm. And this is one of the reasons it's so important for both participants in a mediation to actively participate in the mediation. You need to brainstorm solutions. You want to get the very best ideas out on the table so you have the maximum options to expand the pie, to get everyone as much as possible that is most meaningful to them. So when we were talking about the need to listen actively, I gave the example of a spouse who mentioned that they were interested in maintaining their pension. But when we got curious and asked a few more questions, it turned out that that was really fundamentally about security for their financial future. Well, without active listening, you couldn't then have the opportunity to brainstorm new solutions that another way to secure your spouse's financial future might be alimony, might be an insurance policy on your life. There are all sorts of tools that you can use to address someone's actual goal. And by active listening and asking questions and sharing your good ideas during the brainstorming process, it can allow you ways to find new opportunities to reach resolutions. And by the way, your mediation review counsel can be really helpful for this too, because even though they're not in the room with the two of you and the mediator in most cases, if you share what your spouse shared in the room, your attorney might have some creative solutions for you to put on the table when you next meet with your spouse and your mediator. So brainstorming is a great opportunity to find a compromise in the middle of two people's perspectives. One of the main benefits of mediation for people that are great committed mediation candidates is that you keep control over the outcome of your divorce between the two people that were in the marriage. If nothing else, that is such an important and powerful aspect of mediation. And that's why becoming a good, adept person at your compromise skills so that you have a successful mediation, so that you keep control over the outcome between the two of you, it can be a loving way to conclude a marriage, and it can also really set both of you up for successful futures.